Alright, yay, it's October, which means that it is spooky book season for our class, and just spooky season in general. So I hope you guys are excited. For this week, today, Monday, we are going to do an introduction to the story that we're going to read for the first week of October, and we'll talk about who Edgar Allan Poe was. He is the author of the story. On Tuesday, we will read the actual story and have a discussion afterward and do a worksheet. On Wednesday, we'll read some other stuff that Edgar Allan Poe has written, and we'll talk about the words that he uses a lot to convey certain emotions and moods. On Thursday, we'll clarify the understanding of the story with an activity, and on Friday, we are going to watch the movie. So, yay! The first thing I want to talk about is the word macabre. Macabre means disturbing and horrifying because of involvement with or depiction of death and injury. So, just for a second, I want you guys to just kind of think about some things that you know of that are macabre, whether it's a show, it's a book, it's an experience you've had, although I hope you haven't had any macabre experiences, and just kind of get a really good understanding of what this word means and what kind of things would be macabre. Edgar Allan Poe, our author, is titled as the Master of Macabre, so I think that kind of gives you an idea of what this story is going to be like, and all of his other poems and stories are like. Who was Edgar Allan Poe? Well, there's a picture of him right there, and he was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1809, and he died 40 years later in 1849. He was a poet and a writer. He wrote many stories like the one we're going to talk about today, and he wrote the famous poem, The Raven. And I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but that is one of his, I would say, most popular poems, and it's really the poem that got me interested in Edgar Allan Poe. This little link right here, I'm not going to click on it right now, but after the PowerPoint, go ahead and come back to this slide, click that link. The video is only 2 to 3 minutes long. Just go ahead and watch that real quick and get a good idea of who Edgar Allan Poe it was, because my description of him is not sufficient. Alright, and this is the story we're going to read. It's called The Cask of Amontillado. It was written in 1846, and in that time, the Mexican War was going on, or just about ending. Texas and Florida had only become states the year before, so this was a long time ago. And James K. Polk was the President of the United States. And if this means anything to anyone, Edgar Allan Poe was living in Fordham, New York. The main characters in this story are Montresor. He's our main character, but we don't really find out his name until the end. And he actually narrates the story. And the second character is Fortunato. He's a town drunk and fool, and he is dressed up in a jester's costume for a festival happening that night. And there's a lot of irony in the fact that he's wearing a jester's costume. Just be aware of that. So, a little summary. This is the story of Montresor, who narrates the story in his revenge on a man who betrayed him and his family, named Fortunato. So this is actually a recount, or it's Montresor remembering this event and when it happened. So that's really important for you guys to remember, that this is not something that's presently happening, but a flashback, so to speak. But Montresor is really angry about this thing that Fortunato did, which is never revealed to us. And so he really wants to get revenge on him. And so he thinks about it a lot, and he finally figures out, well, I'm going to use his mad love for wine against him. So Montresor leads Fortunato into the catacombs under the city with the promise of the wine Amontillado. So Amontillado is a Spanish sherry wine, for those of you that don't know, and it's a really fine wine. And Montresor uses Fortunato's weakness for alcohol and for the finer things in life, I guess, like this wine, in order to lure him to his death, actually. So once they reach the catacombs, there's a lot of conversation that's happening on the way down, and we'll read about that tomorrow, but in the end, Fortunato is chained to a wall, and then he's buried alive behind a wall of bricks that Montresor builds. And the specific thing that Fortunato did isn't ever revealed. Obviously, it was bad enough to get him killed. And throughout this whole scene, it's really important to remember the irony, or the kinds of things that are going to be going on, and things that are being said. And I want you guys to just think about that when we read it tomorrow. There are 3 main themes in the story, and that's betrayal, foolishness and folly, and mortality. So betrayal really is truly the main theme. You guys haven't even read the story, and I'm sure you already know that, because Fortunato betrayed Montresor, and it's really this betrayal that is the drive that drives the action of the story. In like crime shows, they would say this is the motive, so to speak, is this bad thing that Fortunato did. And then the second one, folly or foolishness. Fortunato is basically the definition of foolishness. He's even in a jester's costume. And this foolishness leads him to death. So I would say it's similar to the idea that curiosity killed the cat, except that curiosity and being foolish are completely different. But foolishness killed the cat in this case. Mortality is the third theme, and that is the fixation on death in this story. It's all about death. There are bones in the catacombs, and there are corpses. And at the time when this story was written, it was a few years before Poe passed away, and about a year before his wife passed away, and I'm pretty sure she was very sick. So I read on an analysis where it said that this story is basically a compact expression of anxieties concerning death or mortality. And some of you might relate to that, some of you might not. But that's a really important aspect of this story, is the idea that mortality is very fleeting. All right. So tomorrow, when you guys come to class, just come prepared to analyze the story, and I really hope you are excited to read it, because this is a great story that Edgar Allan Poe wrote. We're going to look out for dramatic and verbal irony, and dramatic irony is when the audience knows more than the leading characters, like the fact that we know that Fortunato is going to die, but he has absolutely no idea. And then verbal irony are just things that the characters say, or things that are written in the story that mean something completely different. So we'll find certain things in the story that are examples of that. We'll talk about the story's perspective, and maybe why Poe decided to write it from Montresor's perspective instead of Fortunato's. We'll talk about the plot, and then we'll pick out specific moments in the story that touch on the themes, like betrayal, foolishness, and mortality. So, before this PowerPoint ends, I want you guys to go ahead and email me the answers to these questions. So just go ahead and tell me if you're excited to read this story, or if you're not, you can be honest, it's okay. And if you have read the story, just go ahead and tell me what your favorite part was, or if you even liked it. Just tell me a little bit about your opinion. And then the second question is, what was the best part of your day so far? So that's just to give you guys a little bit of a positive outlook on life, to let me get a better idea of who you are as a person. Maybe your day wasn't so great. You don't have to have a best part of your day. That's okay. Just go ahead and email me the answers to those. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and I hope you're excited to read this story.